Hey, welcome back to the third Saturday in October show, your SEC tailgating podcast for the rest of us. This is Chris Murphy, your SEC West correspondent, coming back to you today, rounding out those SEC Media Days 2021, talking about the Texas A&M Aggies. Last year, Texas A&M went 9-1, very respectable, second in the SEC West. The only thing holding them back was the Alabama Crimson Tide and their ultimate goal of winning the national championship, which they did in the college football playoffs. But for Texas A&M, a very respectable 9-1 season. Again, most of those wins came pretty handedly. So honestly, from this Alabama Crimson Tide fan to the rest of you, a little nervous about Texas A&M this year. I think they've got a shot, even though I am picking Alabama to win the West. I feel like that they are probably the closest thing that the West has to dethroning Alabama from the top spot. I think that LSU probably will come in around third, and we'll talk about this more in other videos or other episodes, but I want to focus today on Coach Jimbo Fisher and the Texas A&M Aggies. First of all, I want to say a little bit about Coach Fisher. He's not been my favorite person. I've been pretty vocal on this show about not really appreciating, liking Jimbo Fisher, how he handles certain things. But my tune is changing. I've got to be honest. I just want to say that I have taken a lot of assumptions from who Coach Fisher is and put them out there as my opinion. But it's changing. And honestly, some of it's changing because I'm getting to know Coach Fisher more, the person versus the coach, or the coach that has to say certain things to get his fan base riled up or to dissuade their opponent's fan base or the team that is from being able to put on a good show and to ultimately, I think that what he does oftentimes is trying to say certain things that is going to affect the game or an outcome or something. And I appreciate that about coaches, but it's not always been my biggest fan. I think it goes back for me when Coach Fisher was with Florida State and the whole campaign for them eventually winning a national championship with Jameis Winston at the helm or behind center at quarterback. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the way that he handled it. And you know what? I don't know all the ins and the outs about what was going on then. I just didn't like how Coach Fisher handled it. But now, all these years later, I now look at him in a different light. And so I'm changing my tune on Coach Jimbo Fisher. And so I just wanted to say that at the top, especially, he was asked at SEC Media Days about Coach Bobby Bowden, who has since passed not too long ago, just a few days ago, in fact. But at this point, his health was in dire condition. He had I think cancer that was, you couldn't do anything about it. Ultimately, he has since passed from then. But at this point, he was kind of on death's door, on bed watch. And Coach Jimbo Fisher had nothing but amazing things to say about Coach Bowden. And now I've seen him in a couple of interviews since his passing, and it could only, just the way that Coach Jimbo Fisher handled talking about Coach Bowden and giving him so many kind words, and how Coach Bowden and the Bowden family helped Coach Fisher growing up. I really respected how he handled that. So without further ado, we're going to go into actually what was said at Media Days, but I wanted to just address quickly how my opinion, my interpretation of who Jimbo Fisher is as a person and as a coach is changing. So with that said, take it with a grain of salt. We all have our own opinions, and I hope that you have yours about these, and I would love to hear them in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking. So, Coach Fisher, the Aggies, they came along to SEC Media Days a few weeks ago in Birmingham, Alabama, brought along Kenyon Green. He's a junior offensive lineman, and DeMarvin Leal, who is a defensive lineman, also a junior. So you know what I do? I like to talk about how folks are presenting themselves. So I do a uni rating or a suit game. So for Coach, I give it a 3. I mean, it kind of looks like he was like, I know I need to wear a suit. I know that we're attached to a mall here. Just go down to the mall and get me something in my size. That's kind of what it looked like for him. But for the players, the student athletes, man, they really brought their A game. So much so that where I think that I'm giving both players from the Aggies the top score that I've given to any of the student athletes for their suit game. I give them both an 8. I thought Kenyon had a great double pocket square situation that he was dealing with, and that DeMarvin had a three-piece suit, looking sharp. Loved it. My favorite two outfits from the student athletes. So Kenyon and DeMarvin get it for the players, and I think for the SEC West, Coach Kiffin still gets it as for coaches. So moving on from there, Coach Speak or our filibuster rating, I give Coach Jimbo Fisher a 5. He's coming off a really respectable 9-1 season, but what are you going to do to reload? He's got a lot of people coming back on both sides of the ball, so that looks very nice and impressive for the Aggies, disconcerting for the Alabama fans and the rest of the people that they'll be playing throughout the year. But he didn't really have to go into a lot of those details. He spoke for about 3 minutes before inviting Q&As, and so I thought that what he did, I'm going to say this maybe 50 times in the next couple of minutes, because he and the student athletes, they all said this word a ton: standard, standard, standard. We raise our standard. We set our standard. It doesn't matter if we're playing Kent State or Alabama or whoever it may be. It's our standard, 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 standard. So they were really driving home that point. So each player said it, coach said it, but I think that what they're trying to say is hey, yes, we have Alabama in our division of our conference. And yes, just before that, the year before last year when Alabama won it all, it was LSU. And so we know that we have a lot working against us when it comes from the division of the SEC West. But we set our own standard, and by focusing on what we can focus on, we can be as successful as we want to be. So that being said, I give him a Coach Speak filibuster rating of about 5. One of the things that he talked about in there, which I really like from a coaching philosophy perspective, was that he said that pressure is a privilege. Talking to those players on the team of that pressure that you're feeling to be amazing or to have to perform at such a high level every play that you get up, that is a privilege. You are in this position because of your gifts, your natural inclinations, what you've learned on the football field, and that has brought you to this point. There's going to be pressure that comes along with that. But it's a privilege because we should be held to a higher standard when we are at that level. I really like that. And so he said, how do we prepare for that pressure? It's by creating daily habits. And that if we prepare and have daily habits that we do, that every day, every play, every moment is for a championship. And if you think about it from that perspective, I really love when coaches talk about this, that philosophy. I feel like I could listen to all the coaches talk about their coaching philosophy and how they inspire the players to be as great as they are able to do. But I really like that section, that pressure is a privilege. And I'm actually going to try to incorporate that in my own life, because I think that there could be a lot to be learned, even if I don't suit up and play football every Saturday. Somebody asked him, his 4th year at Texas A&M is starting this year, so he's in his 4th season. The 4th season he was at Florida State, they won a national championship. And so someone asked him if he was excited about that, and he was like, hey, if that's what happens to us, then great. Because I really like the outcome in my 4th season at Florida State. So if that's what's going on at Texas A&M, then bring it on. I appreciated that. He also then talks about, as most coaches that I have observed, are all for playoff expansion and all for name, image, and likeness, the NIL deals that are now a thing. I don't recall any SEC West coach being asked about either of those, the NIL or the playoff expansion, that any of them said anything other than just yeah, let's bring it on. Let's try to make it as fair as possible, but we're going to do what we can do. And Coach Fisher seemed to fall right in line with what everybody else is saying. So essentially, from a coaching perspective, I think that what they're saying is hey, I'm a coach, and I can affect a lot through what I do at my organization, at my university. But other than that, that's for Greg Sankey to deal with, the SEC commissioner, or that's for other people, or for attorneys to deal with, or people that make the rules. But me, I'm just a coach. I'm going to be here and be the best coach that I can be, and let the chips fall where they may. But everybody seems to be in support of NIL deals for their players to be compensated for their name, image, and or likeness. And they all seem to be fine with the expanding of the playoffs. So much so to where I remember Coach Mike Leach from Mississippi State saying, I wish it was 64 teams, which I would love to see how that would play out, because I'm intrigued by that as well. If we're going to go all the way from a few years ago with the BCS and now with the college football playoff system with 4 teams getting in, sure, 8 teams would be great, but then you're going to hear from that 9th team of like, why is there 16 teams, and then why aren't there 32? So let's go all the way to 64. Hey, let's say that like from here on out we're going to go 64 teams. And I know that I'm talking about Coach Leach's comment while I'm also talking about Coach Fisher. I just find it interesting that some coaches are just like, yeah, if we're going to go all the way there, let's go ahead and go all the way there now. So I just thought that was interesting. Here we go, back to the standard again, focusing on that. Coach was asked how he gets ready to play a particular team. And he said, your opponent should have no bearing as to the standard that you play. There it is again. The standard is the standard. Even in a sentence, he's using standard twice. The standard is the standard. So you play to your standard and to try to be as good as you can be every play and let the chips fall where they may, essentially. And I really liked how he said also when asked about the identity of this team, coming off a 9-1 season, second in the SEC West, a lot of potential, a lot of players coming back. What is going to be going on with the Aggies this year? And he was like, each team has its own identity, and each team has its own 1-year life expectancy, which I find fascinating. Sometimes I watch these talking head things on ESPN or something, and they're all talking about, well, of course they're going to be dominant again this year because that college football team was dominant last year. And we all know that's not the case. It looks like someone who is like Alabama can just reload and keep winning championships, and that's all well and good. But a lot of players that were on that team are not there this year. And so I really appreciate people like Coach Jimbo Fisher talking about the fact that every team has got a 1-year life expectancy. And I think that I'm going to return to that often throughout the season when we see teams that we are expecting a lot out of not quite match the expectations, or teams that we don't quite think are going to be that great exceeding expectations. It's like, yeah, this is because each year, each team has a 1-year life expectancy. It said, and its own identity to control. So they are trying to create an identity for the 2021 Texas A&M Aggies, and then we'll worry about 2022 when that comes. But it's not going to look like 2020, and it's not going to look like 2022. So we have to stay laser focused on this. He was also asked kind of in closing about the idea of Texas and Oklahoma possibly joining the SEC. Again, remember, we're still talking about SEC Media Days, but when the Media Days wrapped up there in July, the news about the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Longhorns joining the Southeastern Conference was not a done deal. So we're still talking a bit about speculation here, and he essentially just answered it in kind of a coach speak way, but in a way that now I respect, which is essentially saying, hey, I'll control what I can control, which is my team. All those other things will be decided by people other than me, but I'm just going to focus on being the best Texas A&M Aggies coach that I can be, try to get our players ready to play some football this year, and we'll go from there. So I appreciated that as well. So as we wrap up talking about all of what Coach Jimbo Fisher said, that I like to kind of sum up what the coach is saying. And so the coach speak summation is that we control our own destiny, we make our own standard. This year, this is the year that we can make something happen, and standard. So we control our own destiny. We make our own standard. This is the year that we can make something happen. I think that what he's essentially saying there is we are now in the 4th year of me being the head coach. We've had a whole cycle of bringing in players and coaches and morphing this thing to what it could be. You saw what we could do last year, 9-1 season, second in the West. If we continue on with that, we can't help if Alabama is perennially on top and there are other teams on the bottom. We are just going to control what we can control. So I don't think that's, yes, it certainly is coach speak. We're going to control what we're going to control. It's just kind of like a cliched saying out there. But looking at it through the lens of where Coach Fisher is with the Aggies, you can't do much more than you can do. You went 9-1. You came in second in the West. The only thing holding you back is the team that went on to win the national championship. So it makes sense to me that they're going to just keep doing what they can do. I know that there's always going to be conversation around how somebody like LSU or Texas A&M or Auburn compare to Alabama when Alabama is still that behemoth. That's just going to be part of the process. And again, I am a Bama fan, and so I'm excited that I get to say that about my own team. But a few years ago, I was saying that about LSU when Alabama had an off season, that they just were dominant. The first team in the history of college football to win 15 games in a season. So what Coach O and Joe Burrow and the LSU Bayou Bengal Tigers did in 2019 is just amazing. But for the Aggies, they just continue plodding away, being the best that they can be every day, controlling their own destiny, setting their own. Yeah, you said it, standard. I knew that you would because we've only said it about 1,000 times in the last 10 minutes or so. So for the third Saturday in October, this is Chris Murphy, your SEC West correspondent, signing out, saying roll balls, baby, and see you soon.